is ask you to open up your notebooks if they're not already open. Because the next maybe 20 minutes, I hope you will be taking lots of notes. And it's going to be, the next 20 minutes is going to be about ideas. Because we have to have ideas to inspire. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask you a question. So on your paper, take 2 minutes to write down what you noticed about what people said they wanted to learn. So, and they're all up around the room so you can see them. So what did you notice about what people said they wanted to learn? All the time, because they'll, I don't know if your people's are like this, but mine, if I tell them to write something, they'll write 1 sentence, and then they'll say, I'm done. And we call that a surface response. And what we really want is depth of thinking. Because a lot of times we skim the surface of our thinking, but we never go deep enough to really understand something. So let me share with you what I wrote down. And you can see that I actually wrote, I was just pretending up there. I noticed many people talked about knowing the basics of the tools, and some, but not enough, connected to the tools to learning. It's good to see much of what we planned will fit their needs. I'm glad to hear/see that. Also, they laughed at my jokes. Except that. So, the bigger question that we're dealing with when we're talking about ICT, which is information communication technologies, is what is technology? Because it's interesting that oftentimes when we ask what is technology, our first initial response is the computer. Right? We think that we must have the computer, or that if we don't have the computer, we're not able to work with the ideas of ICT. But if you look at those words, information and communication, it's natural to being human. We are naturally curious, and we naturally communicate. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite pieces of technology. Is that okay? I don't want you to get jealous. Ruben, can you tell them about the technology in your hands? Have you ever seen one before? I don't know. Have you ever seen one before? Simple, you haven't. Not that one. Okay. What does it do?
Now this is a pencil that is made of wood. It's good for writing. It's a pencil. You can use that. It's a rubber. And it is a good for erasing and what you want to write. Believe it. It looks so nice. It's not one of the best.
Has anybody else ever seen one of these before? Jody, nobody else? Jody and Sharon? 3? Okay, Kathy seen it? Just 2 people. Really, honestly. Has anybody seen one of these before?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, when I say ICT, did anybody think of this?
No.
Why not? It's a rhetorical question. Because you think it has to plug in?
Yes.
You think that it has to have a battery?
Yes.
Maybe it needs to be charged.
Yes.
All right. Let me just say that if I drop my pencil, this tip might break. If I drop my cell phone, well, Sharon, what happens? It's a little bit more expensive, right? People are doing wonderful things with computers. They're doing wonderful things with cell phones and cameras and all sorts of new electronic technology. But we have to remember that it's the ideas that make the difference. And from this, some amazing things have happened. I'm going to show you some things that started with a pencil. you ever heard this piece of music before? Or do they know this piece of music? That particular song is called O Fortuna, and it's in Latin. And it's composed by a man named Karl Orff. But what's important is the lyrics were written by a group of monks. They were poetry written by monks. And they had to write them in secret because they were talking about love. And they were talking about falling in love. And they were worried that if their church found out that they were monks talking about love, they would get in serious trouble. Think about that. A pencil. Let them express the emotions that were going on inside. I don't know if any of your mothers ever sang to you. Yeah? So mine did too.
All these dreams I dream.
This is not my mother.
I dream for you the comfort of a place where you belong. I dream you show forgiveness when others do you wrong. The spirit to be strong, but more I dream that you love someone who will love you as much as I do. I dream that all your dreams come true, and all these dreams I dream for you.
Does anybody ever hear any of their parents or someone in your life tell you that? Yes. Are you laughing because it didn't happen or because you're embarrassed? Have you ever written a love letter?
Yes.
Have you ever written poetry? That's an important piece of ICT. Imagine if someone said, I don't have a computer, so I can't type the way I feel about you, so I'll never get to marry you. Right? You use the ICT that's available to you. I don't know about you also, and I shared this actually with Jane, and that is, in my family, when I was growing up, initially it was just my mother and I in the house. And so when we would do the dishes or the housework on Saturdays, we would turn on the music, and we would pump the music the entire day, right? We would vacuum, it doesn't matter, right? And we would dance. Badly. And this is one of the songs. Anybody know this song? Yeah? No.
What you want, baby, I got. What you need,
You know this song?
you know I should.
You want to dance? So that is a memory for me. And if no one had taken the time to write it down, that memory wouldn't be something that I have with my mother. And if, luckily they didn't say, I'm going to wait until this is easier to put down. Now, has anybody in here ever heard of Michael Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, good. Some of my students are fans of a kind of music that's called a mashup. Has anybody ever heard of a mashup? Yeah, a couple of heads? Basically what a mashup is, well, I'll let you listen to it. So if you've heard of Michael Jackson and know his music, you may recognize part of this. What did you notice? Had anybody heard the Michael Jackson song before? You, Muhammad had. What did you notice?
Yes.
What did you notice about that song?
When I heard about the song, I noticed his dancing style.
It's a dancing style.
The moonwalk.
The moonwalk, yes. We were trying to moonwalk the other day. It didn't work. So that song is actually two songs combined. I don't know if you noticed. There's the Michael Jackson song in there, and then I think it's James Brown as well, right? But they're playing as one song. And that's what's so important about ideas. And write this down. If I share with you my idea, write it down. You cannot own it until you add to it. If I share with you my idea, you cannot own it until you add to it. You add to it. So, that's what we have to think about this week. You didn't get it?
If I show you my idea, you cannot own it until you can
So,
add to it.
I want to share with you some stories through pictures now. Is that all right? Okay. So, this is one of my pupils. In my classroom, actually. His name is Mustafa. Mustafa is about this tall. And he's in Form 1, or he was last year. And I think he grew that much in a year. And you're all teachers, so you know what happens, right? His body, he would fall walking. There were days when he would fall out of his chair because he had not gotten used to being quite so large. And he started falling asleep in class. Now, he fell asleep in everyone's class, so I didn't take it personally. So I'm going to talk to you now about kind of the things that we need to remember about learning in an information society. Because we live in a society of information. Cell phones are connecting us like we have never been connected before. I can send a message to 10 people at once on my cell phone and ask for a response. I can use, we only have one with us, but I could use Sharon's phone right now and wake up my mother in Illinois. I won't, she would get grouchy. But learning has to be active. You must make it active. We must. It is, our students will lose interest if we don't make them active. It's one of the things we started with today, right? Has anyone been to a workshop where they made you get up and go outside for the first 20 minutes before? It has to be active. Learning must get you moving. And it must be collaborative. This is a classroom of students in Philippi Township in South Africa that we got to meet. They didn't have, somebody had stolen, they had a computer lab and then someone broke in and stole their computers. And in this particular class of 45 learners, they couldn't make that many copies, so there were nine learners to one of the handouts. But all the learners were working together collaboratively. My success must be your success. That's part of what collaboration is about. My success must be your success. Meaning that today, in Jody's opening activity, you relied on everyone else here to be successful. Dorothy couldn't, oh, she's not over there anymore. Dorothy could not have won without all of you here. That's what collaboration is about. Learning must also be creative. We know this, right? We know that what is happening in schools across the world isn't working. This is a baboon. I met that baboon. Well, not on purpose. You may notice that this is that. So, if you ever go where there are baboons, and there are signs that say, stay in your car. I recommend that you stay in your car. We pulled off over, right? We'd never seen baboons before. This was new to us. There were signs, but we ignored them. And so I wanted to stay in the car because I saw the signs. But Sharon was sitting behind me in the car and wanted to get out and take pictures. As soon as I got out of the car, and as soon as Sharon got out of the car, this baboon, we will call him Sprinkles, walked past Jody to the driver's side door, opened the door, got in, crawled into the back seat, picked up my bag, went out the back passenger door, stopped in the middle of the road, and sat down. In this side pocket here, I had 2 oranges. He couldn't figure out how to get to the side pocket. And so he opened this pocket, and he threw everything out. He opened this pocket, and threw everything out. He opened all the pockets and threw everything out, and then still couldn't get the oranges on the side. But he sat there, while traffic backed up on either side of the road. Tourists from all over the world got out of their cars with their cameras and their phones and their video cameras and took pictures of all of my stuff. And the baboon sat there. One of the other members of our team tried to get something from the baboon. And that's when we learned that baboons have very large teeth. This is a creative animal. It learned how to open a door. There was no school for baboons and opening doors. Right? Nobody sat down and gave it lesson after lesson on how to open a zipper. It tried with its teeth at first, which kind of grossed me out. Learning has to be creative. We must be creative with our schools. We've forgotten that at some point. Just so we're sure, this is one of the signs that we passed. This is the sign. The baboon was about 5 meters from the sign. We got out of the car. We also saw this sign. Baboons are dangerous and attracted by food. To prove that I saw the sign, that's me in front of the sign. But we got out of the car because learning must be integrated. I didn't care about the sign until it was integrated into my life. Our lessons must be integrated into the lives of our pupils. This is my teddy bear. I take it with me because my sister gave it to me and because I like to take pictures of people holding a bear. We have to integrate our lessons into the lives of our pupils. Imagine if I went down the street and gathered a group of 45 adults. And I said, come to the Suba Centre, sit down. I'm going to teach you about integrating ICT into teaching and learning. Kathy, what would their response be? Yeah, would they want to come? You think so? All right, I don't think so. I think they would say, no, I'm going to finish what I'm doing. Because you have to integrate it into their lives, right? If it's not important to me, I won't learn it. Initially, you can force me to some level. But to really learn something, I have to know that it's important to me. Learning must also be evaluative. It must be evaluative in many different ways. I know that picture doesn't show up, but that's me with my thumb up. We've had you evaluate several things so far today. And we've collected an immense amount of data, and we haven't given anyone a test. Jody could tell you approximately the number of primary teachers in this group right now. John could probably tell you how many of you know how to turn on a computer. Sharon could probably tell you how many of you, I could actually, I think there were 3 or 4 who said they were kind of scared of computers. We didn't have you take a test. We also had you work collaboratively and integratively over here on all of these. And you evaluated each other, because you had to decide what was most important. That was collaborative, it was active, it was integrative because it was important to something that you came up with, and it was an evaluative piece. 51,757 pupils were enrolled in the Suba district last year. Raise your hand if you knew that. I didn't know. University intake. I have these numbers on your pieces of paper, on your notepads right now. Write down the number of boys you think were taken into university, and write down the number of girls that you think were taken into university from that 51,757.
And it's just a guess.
Just a guess. Does everybody have two numbers on their paper? Does anybody know?
Put a number down. Make a guess. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. Boys and girls.
These are the numbers. Out of last year's 51,757 pupils, 128 boys and 6 girls were accepted or qualified to move on to university. I say this to you because it is the thing I struggle with the most in my own teaching. It is the thing that you can't teach. It is the intangible piece of teaching and learning. When I was teaching down in Florida, there was a student of mine, and his name was Tyler. And Tyler was amazingly bright, and funny, and caring. And when he was in the 3rd grade, his mother abandoned the family. And his father was in and out of jail. And Tyler was oftentimes left alone by himself. And one of the pieces that was most troubling to me is when I found out, in my state, where teachers are what is called mandated reporters. So we know if we're required by law, if we know that any of our pupils is in danger, we are required to report that to the authorities. And so it was the first time in my teaching career that I actually had to do this, because I knew that Tyler was staying at the house by himself, and his father was locked up, and I didn't know how he was getting food. And so I helped check him into one of the shelters. And it was a voluntary shelter, so he could leave whenever he wanted to. They couldn't keep him there by force. And so he would leave, and then the police would find him and take him back. And then he would leave, and the police would find him and take him back. And when his father was free again, out of jail, they moved to a different town. And I found out through some of his friends that he was still communicating with, that Tyler wasn't going to school. That he had then become one of those many dropouts that my district worried about. And so it was one of those moments where as a teacher, I felt I had failed. And I knew that it was out of my control, and I knew that there were lots of things that were going on in his life that I could not control. I could not change his family. I could not change where he lived. But it also meant that I needed to redouble my efforts. Because the last thing, the most important thing about learning is that it must be inspirational. This is a picture of the Grand Canyon. It's perhaps one of the most inspirational places I have ever been. It took millions and millions of years to be created, and it all happened because of a river. I like to think that if you keep trying, you can delve that deeply into something. And so I find great inspiration standing there. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm a pretty energetic person. And so wherever I go, I try to get more inspiration. And so the other thing that I think as teachers we all find inspirational is our learners, is our pupils. And so as we got to visit schools, as I said earlier, and we went to, this is an ECD class, and there was this little boy down here. And we walked in, and it was clear, they all, it was whispers of, Mzungu, Mzungu. And it was pretty clear that this little boy had never seen a Mzungu before. So all of his classmates are singing songs, and they sang, how many songs? 5, 6 songs. But this little boy just kept staring at us. And I don't know if you have this, if children have this effect on you, but when they look at you, you can tell that you hold all of their hopes.
Yes.
And that you have something to offer them. And so this picture is now probably one of my favorites, and I'm planning on hanging it in my classroom. Because this little boy, and I don't know his name, this little boy reminded me that no matter what the circumstances, we must be inspirational in our teaching. And I think too often, because of the requirements, we forget the calling. So this week, we're going to be talking about making our learning active, making it creative, making it collaborative, making it integrated, making it evaluative, and making it inspirational. Because we know that we hold the hopes of our children in our hands. So would you like to start that now? All right. Can I get somebody to help me pass out, please?